Brian King as always. I'm an adult with Asperger's, ADHD, dyslexia, and a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I'm also the proud father of 3 boys. All 3 of them have Asperger's, which is a form of autism, and all 3 have ADHD, which makes life a never-ending adventure. And I'm here to teach you how you can have all these challenges and succeed anyway. But before we jump in, I want to put out a big thank you to a sponsor of ours that really helps make this happen. And that sponsor is Microshare International. Their website is microshareintl.com. Now, what they do is they specialize in the most cutting-edge marketing technologies. They helped me with mine, and they've done a fantastic job. So I can't recommend them enough. So please look them up. Ready to dive in? Okay. For years, my clients with either ADHD or autism spectrum challenges have been telling me why the social skills groups their parents send them to simply don't work. One parent even said the only thing her son with Asperger's learned was how to be a robot. He learned to ask questions like, "How was your weekend? How are you feeling today?" in a very mechanical way. There was no emotion behind it because the group taught him how to say the right things, but he wasn't taught how to connect with the person he was talking to. Many more parents are figuring this out as well. However, many continue to send their kids to these groups because they frankly don't know what else to do, and we'll get into that. And they're hoping that someday, if they send them to enough of these sessions, that it'll eventually take somehow. Well, you and I know that doesn't work. Part of the problem is that their kids are afraid to give them honest feedback about these groups because they're often met by the parents' anger when they do. I've heard many parents tell me that these groups did wonders for their child. That is, of course, until I spoke to their child. And here's what I learned over the years from my clients and why I no longer offer or refer people to these social skills groups. Are you ready? The first one is the time and place. Social skills groups are often held after school when a child is overloaded from their school day, or on a Saturday morning when their child is looking forward to downtime. They also tend to take place in a crowded, noisy room with fluorescent lighting that disorganizes them, exhausts them, then expects them to learn. The second reason is what I call the fake it till you make it so your parents get off your back. Kids, whether they're in elementary school or up through high school, have explained that they do what they need to do in these groups to avoid criticism, correction, and to frankly get their parents off their backs. Once they've done enough performing to make the adults happy enough to stop sending them to these groups, then over time they slowly slide back into their comfort zone. The old behaviors that you wanted to change in the first place. One young man told me in front of his mother that he pretended to like the group because if he was honest, she'd lecture him about how he's not trying hard enough, he's not giving it a chance, or how she'll just have to keep shopping around until she finds one that works. His solution was to make her happy instead of getting what his needs were. Here's the third reason. It doesn't happen the way in life that it happens in the groups. These groups are facilitated in a way that bears no resemblance whatsoever to any social situation its attendees will have outside of the group. Did you learn to socialize in a conference room? With one or more adults using a whiteboard to explain relationships like a lesson from a social studies textbook. In fact, one of the main complaints from some of these kids is, "Man, I just came from school and this feels too much like school." And far too often, no disrespect to my colleagues, but it's often facilitated by adults that really do not understand the world of the child they're instructing, which I think is an essential component. And who said the way to learn social skills is in a room full of people that you didn't choose to work with, led by a person focused on fun activities that are intended to teach? The lesson is kind of hidden or camouflaged, but who also forgets to explain to the kids what they're supposed to be learning. With kids that have scatterbrains like ours do, they need a target of their intention. They don't need to be introduced to hidden, suggested type of things. They need to know what they're aiming at so that they can take from it what it is that they need to extract from the lesson to begin with. See, you just found my brain getting a little scattered too. Now put me in a room full of people and a lot of mixed signals and see how well I do. They also don't take the time to see if these kids actually care, because the adults buy in, the professional buys in, so sometimes they assume, of course the kids want to learn this stuff, and they assume that the kids are motivated when they walk in. Well, the reality is, it doesn't matter that they should care, because you can only teach them when they do care. Here's the fourth reason. Where are the parents? Now, this point is critical to understand. Social skills groups tend to focus on the relationships that these kids want to have, the ones with their peers, the ones where they struggle the most, when they need to be focusing on improving the relationships the child already has. The people most motivated to help you succeed in your relationships are your family members, beginning with your parents. And where are they during these classes? They're in the waiting room. Hello? Learning to have relationships with a peer group that, unless it's changed, typically is looking for the opportunity to pounce on this child at any sign of social awkwardness. That is a recipe for failure. They need to begin with a relationship where they have a greater likelihood of success, instead of a greater likelihood of falling flat on their face or being rejected. The relationships that are the foundation of learning meaningful, sustainable, and generalizable social strategies are the ones these children experience every single day, not the occasional ones that occur in a group setting once a week. Here's the fifth reason. The bribe. Almost 100% of the clients I spoke to were either bribed or threatened into going to these social skills groups by their parents. Anything from a promise of a new video game, a favorite meal, or the threat of being denied things, being grounded, was very common. The group itself and the attended benefits of it were a secondary concern. The child learned that the requirement was simply showing up. Then they learned how to deal with it, and then the reward would be given, or the consequence would be avoided. Now, does this sound like a recipe for success to you? Here's the sixth reason. It's like feeding a starving child. How often do these groups meet? Maybe an hour once a week. What good is that? Learning and applying social strategies needs to be something that is the focus of your everyday life, not the subject of a 1 hour a week class that goes by so fast you wonder if anything happened at all. It's like giving a starving child a meal once a week and asking why he isn't gaining weight. Our kids need a lot more than that 1 hour. Here's the seventh reason. Repeat after me. One child explained to his father that in his group, they spent the whole time following the "when I say this, you say that. Now repeat after me." And that was how the whole group was ran, and that was that particular professional's view of how relationships worked. The father was very surprised, and he admitted that he had been remiss in asking for details about what went on in the classes. He simply trusted that the clinician knew what he was doing and would be providing good skills to his child. Now, again, don't get me wrong, clinicians have a lot of skills, and I trust that this person was very, very skilled in many, many ways. But in this sense, I suspect that this clinician missed the mark, didn't really understand this population as well as possible. And Basically, as with some of my other clients, his son was telling him what he wanted to hear. He didn't want his dad to be disappointed with him. Here's the 8th reason. There is a myth in this world that children with either ADHD or ASD will learn socialization simply by having the opportunity to socialize. Wrong. That's how typical kids learn, because they are neurologically wired to pick up the feedback they get from the people that they're interacting with. The kids that I work with don't learn this way. That's why they're diagnosed with ADHD or ASD to begin with. So what is a parent supposed to do? If there are so many problems with social skills groups, what do you do instead? Well, the truth is, our kiddos learn best one-on-one, where there are fewer distractions, more quality control in the interaction, and a lot less risk than that posed by looking bad in front of a room full of strangers or in front of your peers. And it certainly guarantees more success than relationship skills that are taught in rote assembly line fashion. What I've experienced in my own life, as somebody who spent decades struggling with social skills, I learned them best one-on-one. My kids learn them best one-on-one. And for years now, I've been working with parents to help them identify and maximize the number of teachable moments in the lives of their children. Because they happen every day. You just miss them, you don't recognize them, and you don't know what to do with them. But those are the moments that actually have meaning for them. The ones that occur in the relationships they currently have, the relationships they need and depend on. The ones who need the training, most of all, are the parents. Placing all of the pressures on the child to make this relationship work is ignorant and cruel. These kids struggle too much to take on that much responsibility at first. They need a partner that is learning with them and conspiring for their success. I find the best success when the parents and their children work together and improve their own relationship first, before trying to move outside the family and make relationships with peers. Because with their parents, those experiences are far more meaningful and generalizable than the read, remember, and regurgitate style that exists in far too many social skills groups today. Now, one thing I want to make perfectly clear is that I'm not against teaching our kids social strategies in a group setting. In fact, I find that they tend to benefit more from support groups than social skills groups. Now, this is just my experience. I imagine there are plenty of people out there with different experiences, but of course, like any other human being, I can only speak from mine. In a support group, they're allowed to sit and listen, which gives them time to identify who in the group they think they can connect with. It also gives them time to introspect a little bit, improve their self-awareness as they listen to other members of the group give language to their experiences. When I ran support groups many years ago, it was a frequent experience for members to become excited when they heard their experiences validated. They felt like, hey, I'm not so different after all. There are people that get this. And in many cases, and this was particularly exciting, the quietest members of the group, the ones I was told probably would never say anything, begin to open up, come out of their shell, and ask for advice. Because they wanted the guidance. But when they saw that it was being given by those who understood them, now it was safe. What are your next steps? Many parents and professionals believe that something is better than nothing. This is really a dangerous attitude to have, because if the something only serves the purpose of reinforcing to your child that yet again, something didn't work, and once more, they're asked to do something that isn't a good fit. This just reinforces the experience that socializing with others equals frustration and pain. I recommend taking a step back and evaluating the time, effort, expense, and aggravation that goes into compelling your child to engage one of these groups. If you find that what keeps you going isn't the results you experience, but is more so the anticipation of results, if we just keep going, someday we'll see a benefit. If that's your approach, then it's time to regroup. Seek out those who can teach you how to authentically connect with your child in a way that teaches them how to have a relationship with you. Sometimes it's a neighbor, a relative, a professional coach, or your child's favorite teacher. A relationship isn't about the mechanics of conversation. It's about the partnership of two people. Once we learn how to create one successful partnership, we then have the tools to create others. I hope this episode's been helpful for you. If so, please feel free to pass it on. Don't forget to visit my website, succeedwithadhd.com, and leave a review there. Let me know how I'm doing. Please feel free to leave a review also on either iTunes or YouTube so that other people can learn how this can be beneficial to them. And look for the little phone number at the end of this. If you have a question for me, feel free to send it along. I'd be more than grateful to answer it for you. And be sure to join me next time for another episode of Succeed with ADHD Anyway. This is Brian King saying, thanks for being you.